This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so thank you all for joining this demo session or webinar, whatever you want to call it as. I think you already know the agenda of this particular call is helping you understand what exactly SAP RAR is, and then what you can expect out of the course that we are about to start in the next month. So before I start with the technical topic, let me introduce myself. My name is Vikram, and I am working as a SAP consultant from more than 15 years. Uh, in SAP consulting, I have worked on different modules. I started with SAP FICO, but then from last few years, I'm focusing more on the advanced topics related to SAP, for example, SAP FSCM, SAP Central Finance, SAP RAR, and not only I restricted myself to from the FI or CO domain, but I also got to get the exposure on the logistics component also. That is because before I entered into the SAP industry, I was working in a small company where I was taking care of not only the particular department, but it was like logistics, HR, finance. I was exposed to all the different areas, and that is the reason it was easier for me to understand all the different areas within SAP. So as I told you, I got around 15 years of experience into SAP, and currently I am working as a freelancer. Plus, I am having my own consulting firm where we are helping customers implement SAP and implement, as I told you, the advanced module. So we are working on few projects where we are implementing SAP FSCM for customers, SAP controlling for customers. We have worked on various different projects on SAP RAR. I worked as a freelancer also, and I have within my company, as I told you, I have a consulting company. There also we are uh, helping customers implement SAP RAR or supporting the customers who have already implemented SAP RAR. So this is about me. Talking about the topic, what we are going to cover today is SAP RAR. Okay, so first we will understand what SAP RAR is. We will understand which companies are implementing SAP RAR, which are the industries which are affected by the new accounting principle due to which SAP RAR is being implemented. So before I proceed, please confirm on the chat screen if my voice is clear, you are able to hear me clearly. Okay, perfect. So let's continue with our discussion. So SAP Revenue Accounting and Reporting, or SAP RAR. What exactly is SAP RAR? So you can see revenue accounting and reporting. The name itself is revenue accounting and reporting. So you can see from this definition itself, it is concentrating on the revenue part. Okay, and what is revenue? Revenue is when you sell some products or services to the customer. Okay, whatever amount you get in return, that is your revenue. Okay, so for example, if I'm selling my product to the customer, I can generate the revenue in my SAP or non-SAP system. Okay, giving you the example, let's assume you are selling in this examples and whatever we are going to cover during the course also, we will be taking the example of the telecommunication company, because that is the industry which is most affected, and this is the industry where most of the customers are implementing SAP RAR. Okay, so let's take an example of a telecommunication company which is selling the mobile devices and the data plans or the calling plans to the customers. Okay, so in this example, let's focus first on the mobile device, which is the physical material which we are selling to the customer. So when we are selling the physical material to the customer, okay, if I talk only from the SAP point of view, in SAP, what we do normally, we get a order from the customer, we do the PGI or we do the delivery and PGI to the customer, and finally we send the bill to the customer. So normally in SAP, again, if I focus only on SAP, when the revenue is booked, so when we create the sales order, is it the revenue is getting booked? Definitely not. Sales order doesn't generate any accounting entry. When we are delivering the material to the customer, is it generating the revenue? Again, no. When we deliver the material to the customer, our COGS account gets debited and our inventory account gets credited, right? So here also we are not generating the revenue. The third step is billing. When you are doing the billing, is it the revenue getting generated? The answer is yes. So when we are generating the bill to the customer, at that time itself the revenue is getting booked, right? So let's focus on this example itself. We are generating the revenue, or we are recognizing the revenue when the bill is done to the customer. But if the requirement from the IFRS 15 is the revenue should be generated at the time of delivering the material to the customer, which means as soon as the material is delivered to the customer, the revenue has to be recognized. Okay, so now let's assume we are talking about July month. In July month, we have delivered the material to the customer, but due to some XYZ reason, we were not able to bill. So what will happen in this case? In this case, system will not show you any revenue done in the July month. Okay, if I talk about the normal SAP system without using any RAR functionality, system will not show you the revenue booked in this particular month because the billing is not done. And as I told you, normally in SAP, the billing generates the revenue entry. Okay, revenue is recognized only when the billing is done. So you can see in this example, if I follow the normal SAP practice, if I follow the normal SAP SD and FI scenario, my revenue is not generated in this month, although the activity when the revenue should be generated as per the IFRS 15 is already completed. Okay, so this is a reason why SAP introduced SAP RAR. This is a very simple example which I gave you. There are n number of scenarios which we need to discuss from IFRS 15 point of view. So this is one of the reason why SAP introduced SAP RAR, so that the revenue is recognized based on the standards of IFRS 15. Right? So if you want to understand SAP RAR, the first thing that you need to understand is what exactly is IFRS 15, okay, and how the different scenarios are handled in IFRS 15. If you know those scenarios, you just need to understand how this can be configured in SAP so that the revenue is recognized depending upon the activities or depending upon the different scenarios at what point in time the revenue should be recognized as per IFRS 15. Right? So what exactly is SAP RAR? As I told you, SAP RAR stands for Revenue Accounting and Reporting, and it is a, you can say, module or submodule or the functionality which is available in SAP, which allows the customers to recognize the revenue as per the IFRS 15 requirements. Okay, so that is a basic definition. SAP RAR is provided by SAP to take care of IFRS 15 requirements. Okay, so if the companies want to comply with accounting standards like IFRS 15 and ASC 606 is another, you can say, accounting principle or accounting standard, which is also based on the same line. So if you want to follow IFRS 15 and ASC 606 from the revenue accounting point of view, then you need to follow, or then you need to activate SAP RAR in your SAP system. Okay, and this module, because it is provided by SAP itself, this module is already integrated with SAP SD and SAP FI. So in the example which I gave you, the process starts from SAP SD. You create a sales order in SAP, you do the delivery in SAP, you do the invoicing in SAP, okay, and then SAP FI. So based on when you do the delivery, the system is generating the accounting document. When you are doing the billing, again the system is generating the accounting document. But if I go through the normal SDFI process, my revenue is not getting generated at the right time, and that is the reason I need SAP RAR in between. So I will directly go to this slide so that I can explain you how it works. So you can see this is my operational system. Operational system means this is where my transaction is done. I'm doing this sales order, I'm doing the delivery, I'm doing the billing from the SD point of view. And before it reaches to SAP FI for making the accounting postings, okay, or maybe you can see, you can say there is SAP RAR in between, which will calculate how much revenue should be recognized. So at the month end, okay, so normally we are focusing from the month end point of view here. Why? Because entire month, whatever you do the delivery, whatever you do the billing, it will directly go to SAP FI. It will not go through SAP RAR. But at the month end, whenever you are checking whether how much delivery I have done and how much billing has been done, if there is any difference, that amount will get calculated in SAP RAR, and finally the adjustment posting will be made in SAP FI. Okay, so don't get confused what will go through this, what will not go through this at this stage, but just remember at the end of the month, I want to do my proper financial reporting. And in my financial reporting, we want to show how much revenue was recognized for a particular month, depending upon IFRS 15 requirements. And that is the reason each and every transaction that you create in your operational system, that has to flow through SAP RAR so that the calculations can be performed. And finally, the accounting entry should be made as per the rules and regulations of IFRS 15. Right? So let's go back. We understood SAP RAR is a module or submodule or a functionality which is within SAP, which helps customers to recognize the revenue as per IFRS 15 requirement. And it is by default integrated with SAP SD component, SAP FI component. We will also understand what are the other components which are now integrated with SAP RAR with the latest version. Okay, it allows combining line items. Maybe if you can skip this as of now, just remember that the source operational application, it is not only SAP SD. You can bring the data from SAP SD, you can bring the data from SAP BRIM, okay, and you can also bring the data from non-SAP solutions. So for those customers who are not using SAP SD as their operational system or SAP BRIM as their operational system, let's say they are using some third-party system today, those customers also can integrate SAP RAR with the non-SAP system to calculate the revenue, how much revenue should be recognized for a month, okay, in the SAP RAR component. So this is not only for SAP SD or BRIM. In short, this is supported in all the non-SAP systems also. Obviously, the effort required from the integration point of view will be more for non-SAP systems. They are not by default integrated, but yes, those are also supported through the staging tables. Okay, we'll discuss all those things in detail. Now, as I told you, we need to understand the IFRS 15. If you want to work on SAP RAR, your IFRS 15 logic should be very clear. If the scenario is not clear, for example, if a customer is giving you this scenario that this is how my revenue should be recognized, okay, as per IFRS 15, and if you're not able to understand the scenario itself, definitely it is going to be very difficult for you to set up the configurations or to set up the scenario in the SAP system. Right, so the first thing we need to understand whenever we are going to talk about any new scenario, first we will understand from the IFRS 15 point of view how this scenario works, and then only we need to go into SAP and configure that scenario. Right, so the basic scenario, this is a high level IFRS 15 5-step model, okay, which is applicable for all the contracts which will follow IFRS 15 accounting principle. Okay, so how this 5-step model is structured. See, number one is identify the contract with the customer. So not all the contracts may go through SAP RAR process. There are some scenarios or there are some companies which are not directly affected by IFRS 15 requirements. Okay, so there are some industries. They don't need to follow IFRS 15 or maybe they don't have the scenarios which will have to follow IFRS 15. Okay, let's assume those companies are only selling the physical products and their delivery and billing is always done in the same month. Okay, let's say if this is the requirement. So if the company is saying as soon as we do the delivery, we do the billing. In that case, there is no point of implementing SAP RAR for this customer because anyways, the delivery and billing is happening at the same time. Right, so first we need to identify for which customers RAR will be applicable. So that will be depending upon the industry. Even if you identified the industry, within the same company also, there may be some scenarios which will not require SAP RAR. Okay, let's say this company is selling products as well as services. And for products, as I told you, they have the policy that as soon as the delivery is done, invoice will also be done. So for products, they don't need to follow SAP RAR or they don't need to worry about IFRS 15 requirement. Right? That is the reason first we need to identify which contracts will go through the SAP RAR functionality and which contracts will directly go through SD to FI without going to RAR. Right? So first thing is identify the contracts which are relevant. Once you identified the contract, second step is identify the separate performance obligations. Now these terminologies are very important. You need to understand these terminologies. What are performance obligations? Performance obligations are physical or the service, physical products or the services which are segregated. Okay, so for example, even if I am selling two different products to my customer, I am selling the physical product, let's say mobile device, and I am selling the services, which is the data plans. So in this example, these are the two performance obligations. One is mobile and second is the physical data plan, okay, or the internet plan. So these are the different performance obligations which we need to identify from each contract. Maybe before you go through this is another example. This is the same example which we are using from years when we are giving the trainings and all. But when we are actually working on the system, we will definitely come up with different examples. So you can see this is a best example to understand how SAP RAR works or how IFRS 15 works. Example, you can see a telco company, a telecommunication company who is selling the mobile phone and the service contract for 20, let's say dollar per month for 24 months. So let's say you are a telecommunication company and you uh, entered into the contract with the customer for 24 months. You are going to provide the service. Okay, so data service or call service, whatever it is, and you are going to charge $20 per month. Okay, so overall it is 24 into 20, which is $480 for 24 months. And if a customer is buying this service, you are giving the mobile phone device only for 20 USD. This is not the actual price, right? This is not a, if you are selling this mobile phone without selling this plan, definitely $20 is too small amount. You will not give the device to the customer at $20. But if the customer is buying this 24-month service, then only you are having the offer where you are giving the device for $20, which means 480 plus 20, overall you are charging $500 to the customer and you are giving him two different products. One is mobile phone, second is service contract. Right? So overall you are charging $500 to the customer. Now, if you are not following IFRS 15, then what you simply will do, you will recognize the revenue of $20 for mobile phone and you will recognize the revenue of $480 for service contract. But IFRS 15 works in the different way. Okay, and that is the reason we need to understand the 5-step framework. So step number one is whether this contract is applicable for IFRS 15 or not. Yes, it is applicable. Why? There are two reasons. First of all, the price at which you are giving the mobile phone is not the normal price which you sell as a standalone product. Standalone product means if some customer is coming and he is asking you to sell this product, are you going to give this product to the customer at $20? No. My normal price, the standalone selling price of this particular mobile device is $360. So if a customer comes and asks me, okay, I just want mobile phone, how much you will charge? The answer is $360. But only because this customer is not only buying this mobile phone, he is also buying the service contract. That is the reason you are giving him in $20. Right? So this is a standalone selling price. You need to identify what is the standalone selling price for your mobile phone as well as your service contract. So these are the two performance obligations. First thing, this is the contractual price which you are charging to the customer. You need to identify what is a standalone selling price. Okay, so step number one, if you go back, identify the contract, whether the contract is relevant, answer is yes. Second is identify the separate performance obligations. So we identified there are two performance obligations here, mobile phone and service contract. What is the third step? Determine the transaction price. Find out what is the transaction price. The transaction price is this one, $20 for mobile phone and $480 for service contract. This is step number 3. Step number 4 is allocate the transaction price to the separate performance obligations. This is something which is calculated by RAR engine in SAP RAR. And if you are not following, if you are not using SAP RAR, then you need to maybe manually calculate as per IFRS 15 what would be the allocation price. Now let's understand how the allocation price is calculated. So as I told you, this is a contractual price. This is a price that you are charging to your customer. Okay, and in SAP RAR or in IFRS 15, this is one of the most important requirement called as SSP, standalone selling price. So what is the price of this material if this product is sold independently? Okay, so for mobile phone it is 360 and for service contract it is 240. Okay, which means normally if a customer comes and buys these two products separately, we will be charging him 600 USD overall. Okay, now we need to calculate based upon the percentage. So 60% of the cost for the standalone is for mobile phone and 40% of the cost is for service contract. Now we charged 500 to our customer. We need to divide this amount as per this standalone selling price percentage, which means 300 is the allocated price for mobile phone and 200 is the allocated price for service contract. Okay, which means now there are two performance obligations, and this performance obligation mobile phone, I can recognize the revenue immediately as soon as I delivered the material to the customer. If I given the mobile phone to the customer, my performance obligation is completed. Okay, we can generate the revenue as soon as the mobile phone has been given to the customer. But when it comes to the service contract, this is a 24 months contract. So whatever revenue you are getting, okay, if you are getting according to allocated price, if you are getting the revenue of 200, this 200 is not only for a single month when you are starting the contract. This is for next 24 months, and every month you have to recognize the revenue divided by 24. So 200 divided by 24, which is 8.33. This is the recognized revenue for each month. Okay, so these are the different calculations. These are the complicated calculations which we want the system to do, and every monthly generate the revenue as per the IFRS 15 requirement. Right, so if I go back, we identified the allocation price, and fifth step is recognize the revenue when the entity satisfies the performance obligation, which means for the mobile device, the revenue will be recognized as soon as the mobile is delivered to the customer, and for service contract, we will recognize the revenue every month. Okay, so total revenue that we are making is 200 divided by 24 is equal to 8.33 will be the revenue recognized per month. Okay, so for each and every relevant contract which has the applicability of IFRS 15 has to go through these 5 steps, and system will automatically calculate all this information, and finally it will generate the accounting entry as per the requirement. Okay, so now a high level overview or architecture of SAP RAR with the same example. So let's assume we are using SAP sales and distribution module. This customer is already using SAP as their operational system. So they are creating the sales order here, they are doing the delivery here, they are doing the billing here, everything is getting done here. Okay, and we identified that this sales order is relevant for RAR. So what will happen is, as soon as the sales order is created, or as soon as the delivery is created, or as soon as the invoice is created, it will go through API call to SAP RAR engine. Okay, in SAP RAR engine, there is an inbound processing. Inbound processing means how the system will take the data from SAP SD component. So there are a lot of configurations that we need to do. We need to tell the system which sales order types, which item categories, which are the selection criteria based on which system will determine whether this contract is relevant to SAP RAR or it should directly go to SAP FI. Right, so that is the configuration that we need to do in the inbound processing. Okay, and based on that, system will create RAI, revenue accounting item. Okay, so as soon as you create a sales order, depending upon how many lines are there, how many performance obligations are there, system will create a revenue accounting contract in SAP RAR system. Right, so contract will be created. The system will calculate the revenue of that particular contract as per the calculations which are defined in SAP RAR engine. Okay, and finally all the calculations will be made and system will be able to determine how much is the revenue finally the revenue will be posted in SAP FI, General Ledger Accounting. Right? These are the different steps. We will discuss all this in detail. And also BRF plus. So there are many configurations in SAP RAR which is based on the BRF plus. BRF plus is a, you can say, previously if you are aware about SAP SD, there were conditions. So how the conditions will be determined. So based on my selection criteria, how the system will determine the conditions. Same way, the BRF plus engine also works in the same way. So if you want to determine the accounts, okay, if you want to determine how many performance obligations, if you want to determine what is the standalone selling price of the material, those all things are maintained in BRF plus engine. Okay, so we will need to do the configuration for BRF plus in order for the system to determine what would be my performance obligation, what would be my standalone selling price, how much would be the calculation, what would be the amount, all those things we can set up in BRF plus application. Okay, and finally, the accounting documents will be created from SAP RAR engine. So this is how the entire enterprise, or you can say RAR architecture works. Okay, so the example that I gave you is a very basic example for your understanding how SAP RAR works, but there are n number of scenarios. I will give you an example. So we discussed that the sales order is created. Let's say the sales order is created, the same example that we took. We have given the device to the customer and customer has asked for 24 months service. Now, after 6 months, this customer came back and he said, I want additional service of 24 months. So one service he is already using for 24 months. Now he is asking for another service for the 24 months, which I want to enter into the same contract. Now you can understand this is an example of contract modification, okay, or contract change. We are going into the sales and distribution module and we are changing that contract. Okay, it may be also the amount is changed. It may be also the time is changed. There can be n number of scenarios. So whenever you are doing any change in your operational system, how it will get affected in SAP RAR? Okay, that is one example. So it is not only contract creation, it is about contract modification scenarios also. Okay, and on top of that, for the telecommunication industries, there are some other scenarios. For example, if the change is occurred, this change is only applicable from today onwards, or the change is applicable from the first day of the contract. Okay, so those are the scenarios we need to understand. If a customer says, even if the customer comes after 6 months and he want us to change the contract applicability should be from the first day of the contract. Or he can say no, if the change comes, that will be only affected on the date of change. Whatever is already posted, those should not get affected. Right? These are the different scenarios which we need to consider. There is freeze unfreeze scenario. Okay, freeze unfreeze means, you buy a contract from the telecommunication company for 12 months. And after 6 months, let's assume you are traveling for 2 months and that is the reason you requested the telecommunication company, can you freeze my contract for 2 months? Which means the initial contract which was for 12 months, if it is freeze for 2 months, you'll be able to use it for 14 months, but there will be the freeze period for 2 months. So this freeze, unfreeze scenarios, modification scenarios, there are n number of things that we need to understand from the RAR point of view. Okay, good thing is this is very straightforward module in SAP. So if you have a little background in SAP SD or SAP FI, or even if you don't have, if you are eager to learn SAP SD from the basics, because the sales, order, delivery and billing, at least you need to understand if you want to understand how SAP RAR works. Okay, so that basic understanding if you got, it would be very easy for you to understand this particular module. Okay, please confirm. I'm just speaking. Please confirm on the chat screen if everything is clear as of now. I mean, I will give you the time for the questions, but what I mean by clear is if you are able to hear me clearly, there is no disturbance. Okay. So now, the last thing which I want to speak about is what you can expect out of this course. I assume that you got the idea of what exactly SAP RAR is, why SAP RAR was introduced by SAP, and then how the RAR calculation engine works, and finally, how the architecture of SAP RAR works. So let's go to the last slide, which I think there are a lot of questions on the chat screen. What will be covered during the course? So we are going to start with the introduction to IFRS 15. We will talk about various different scenarios. So you can expect first or second sessions to be theoretical sessions where we will understand how IFRS 15 works, what are the different scenarios. So if we have the scenarios listed, it would be easier for us to track how much part we already covered in SAP RAR and what not we have covered. So first we will understand the basic scenarios according to IFRS 15 and we will introduce what SAP RAR is. Okay, then we will understand how SAP RAR is integrated with the operational systems. So SAP has provided the default integration with SAP SD without any additional effort because SAP SD and SAP RAR normally they are within the same system. So there is no separate integration required. But yes, if you are having SAP SD system separately and SAP RAR system separately, then definitely there will be some technical steps required in order to integrate the two systems. Okay, but what we are going to cover in this course, I'll give you the summary of what server we are going to use and how it is configured. So we are going to see SAP SD and SAP RAR within the same system. Okay, within the same system we have SAP SD and we have SAP RAR. So if I want to learn SAP RAR, as I told you, there will be around one session on making you understand the basic concepts of SAP SD, how the sales orders are created, how the how the deliveries are done, how the invoicing are done. Okay, those are the things which we'll be discussing. And within the same system, we have SAP RAR. We will see what are the configurations required for inbound processing, how we can tell the system that this order type should go through SAP RAR, but this order type should not go through RAR, right? So those setups in inbound processing we have to configure. We will be having the overview of integration with SAP BRIM and non-SAP system. This we will not be able to see practically. Let me be very open. Okay, so I have heard a lot of questions whether the BRIM will be covered. See, BRIM is a separate module altogether, and I'm not the expert as of now. I have worked on it, but as of now, I don't feel that I'm in the position to give the training on SAP BRIM as of today. Okay, but maybe yes, in future, once I'm comfortable, I can start another training on BRIM. At this moment, I will be just giving you the overview of what exactly is SAP BRIM and how it is integrated with SAP RAR. But let me tell you one thing. It doesn't mean that if you don't know SAP BRIM, you will not be able to work on SAP RAR. As a SAP RAR consultant, you need to understand this completely, this entire section. Inbound processing, revenue accounting and engine, BRF plus. There can be any operational system. It can be SAP SD, it can be FICA, it can be BRIM, it can be non-SAP. You cannot control that, right? Even if you know all the things, if a customer comes up with the requirement that they have non-SAP system, this doesn't mean that if I don't know non-SAP system, I'll not be able to use SAP RAR. SAP RAR starts from here. Okay, this integration is some of the integrations are by default. As I told you, SAP SD, we don't need the technical consultant to integrate it as long as those are in the same system. Same way goes for BRIM also. BRIM is also supported if it is in the same system, right? Same system means obviously from the BRIM point of view, there are technical activities which might be required. But if BRIM is directly coordinating with the SAP S/4HANA system, within the same system, SAP RAR is automatically integrated, right? And for more information, like what would be the integration requirement from the BRIM point of view, that will be definitely taken care by the BRIM consultant. Okay, so normally as a SAP RAR consultant, we need to discuss with the BRIM consultant what information will be sent to our SAP RAR component. And obviously at the end, whatever calculations will be done, those will be sent to the financial accounting. Okay, one more thing which we are going to discuss as an overview is COPA. SAP RAR previously, if I talk about 3-4 months back before 1909 version, so it was not possible to directly send the entries or integration between SAP RAR and COPA. Now with what we are going to learn is SAP S/4HANA 2022. Within SAP S/4HANA 2022, SAP RAR is also integrated with COPA. Okay, so again, I'm not saying I'll be teaching you COPA here, but I'll be giving you the overview of how the SAP RAR entries will be passed to COPA. Okay, so this is what you can expect. So as I told you, we will talk about the detailed integration between SAP SD. Okay, so our main focus will be how the data is flowing between SAP SD and SAP RAR during this course. But as I told you, if you understood one component, be it any component, be it BRIM, be it third party, okay, the concept of SAP RAR will remain same. Only the operational system who is sending the data can change. Okay, step by step configurations, whatever configurations are required from SD point of view, whatever configurations are required from RAR point of view, whatever configurations are required from the FI point of view, those things we'll be discussing, including BRF plus configurations or BRF plus determination. We will see the contract cycle. Okay, as I told you, creating the new contracts, changing the existing contracts, and the different scenarios that we discussed. Okay, so again, another important thing, what are we going to cover? Is it the classic contract management or optimized contract management? So what is the, first of all, what is the difference between classic and optimized? Classic contract management was the only option up to I think 1909 or 1809. Okay, which means when SAP RAR was introduced, there was one way of how the calculations will be done in the background. Okay, IFRS 15 calculations, how those will be done in the background. But then as soon as the customer started implementing SAP RAR solutions, they found out there are some loopholes, there are some improvement areas which can be, for example, we can write our own code if required to change the logic of how SAP RAR works. Okay, and on top of that, there were some additional requirements in terms of, as I told you, the freeze and freeze scenarios, the modification scenarios, advanced scenarios, what I mean. So those advanced scenarios were developed by SAP step by step, and finally they came up with the optimized contract management. So the one that we are going to use by default is optimized contract management, but at the same time, I will show you some overview on how the classic was working. Okay, so most of the time, whenever we are going to talk about the revenue contracts, we will follow the optimized contracts. But again, we will follow the standard ones. Okay, don't expect that I'll be showing you the customized uh, scenarios. Customized scenarios are client specific, just like normal FISD. We have the standard scenarios, and if required, we can go for customizations. But yes, I will tell you the BADIs, BAPIs, which are provided by SAP for SAP RAR in order to handle those customized scenarios. Okay. Then best practices for RAR, how to implement and all, real-time business use cases in some of the industries. Okay, so mostly as I told you, telecommunication industry, but I also worked on the service industry, which is into providing the consulting services to the customer, just like for example Deloitte, Accenture. These are also the companies which are affected by IFRS 15. So those companies are also following SAP RAR. So we'll talk about those companies also, which are the applicable scenarios. And finally, as I told you, I'll give you the overview to costing based COPA, integration with costing based COPA. So how SAP RAR is integrated with costing based COPA. Okay, so this course which we are planning, I think most of you already know, it is starting from 19th of August, and this is going to be the weekend course only on Saturdays and Sundays, India Saturdays and Sundays. So if you are from US, I think for you it would be Friday and Saturday, and the timings will be 9 a.m. IST. Okay, India time, morning 9 a.m. This is as of now, I think 6 weeks should be more than enough. But if required, 1 or 2 weeks, that is not a problem. So normally 6 weeks, which means 12 sessions multiplied by 2 hours, around 24 to 25 hours normally are enough. Wherever I have conducted the corporate sessions, normally we go with the schedule of 24 to 25 hours, and that is normally enough. But at the same time, it is not like, okay, we completed 6 weeks and we are done. If there is any scenario which is left, if there is any topic which is left, definitely we can extend that if required for 1 or 2 weeks. Okay, that is not a problem. Now, I think I clearly gave you what you can expect out of this course. Now, I also have some expectations out of this course. Okay, expectations from the audience. So I want to be very open that who should join and who should not join. My recommendation would be, if you are completely new to SAP RAR, definitely this is a course for you if you want to start your career. If you have little bit background, then also it is good. But if you are a consultant who already worked on SAP RAR and if you want to refresh your knowledge, okay, definitely no harm. You can definitely join this if you want to refresh your knowledge. But my request would be, my priority would be, whenever I am discussing something, a topic, my concentration would be everyone is able to understand that. So it should not be like if I'm discussing one topic and because you are working on the project and you are getting some error, okay, don't expect that you will ask the question on that particular call and I'll be able to answer. Okay, definitely not. So if I am discussing step 1, I'm not expecting the questions on step 4 because that is the step which I have never explained till now. Definitely, once we reach to step 4, you can definitely ask that question. Okay, so this is the problem normally I face for the experienced consultants. They are very like they want to get the answers in the first session itself.